There are some people who spend their entire lives escaping reality, not because they are weak, but because reality itself feels too empty to survive. Long ago, in the dry lands of Spain, there lived an old man who became obsessed with stories. Stories of knights, of dragons, of honor, of impossible adventures. Every night, he sat alone beneath candlelight, turning fragile pages with trembling hands. And slowly, the line between imagination and reality began disappearing. Until one day, he made a decision that changed everything. He would no longer read about heroes. He would become one. His name was Don Quixote. And this is the story of the saddest dreamer ever written. In a quiet village of La Mancha, life moved slowly. Dust covered the roads. The days repeated endlessly. And inside a small forgotten house, an aging man lived alone with books. His real name was Alonso Quixano, but reality no longer interested him. The world around him felt ordinary, colorless, dead. Only stories made him feel alive. He read constantly, ancient tales of knights riding through kingdoms, men fighting giants, saving princesses, protecting honor. Night after night, his obsession deepened. Until eventually, he stopped sleeping properly, stopped caring about reality. And somewhere inside his exhausted mind, something broke. He looked at his reflection one evening and no longer saw an old man. He saw a knight, a forgotten hero chosen for greatness. And from that moment onward, Alonso Quixano disappeared forever. Don Quixote had been born. The armor he discovered was ancient, broken, covered in rust. But to Don Quixote, it looked magnificent. He cleaned every piece carefully, polished his helmet, prepared his sword, and when he finally stood before the mirror, he smiled proudly. Not because he looked powerful, but because he finally looked like the man he dreamed of becoming. Then he turned toward his horse, an old weak animal barely capable of walking. But Don Quixote renamed him Rocinante, a noble warhorse worthy of legends. And suddenly, even reality itself began transforming beneath his imagination. Ordinary things no longer appeared ordinary. Everything became part of a grand adventure. That is the dangerous beauty of dreams. If someone believes strongly enough, fantasy can begin feeling more real than truth. Every knight needed a lady to protect, a woman worthy of devotion. And so Don Quixote chose a simple peasant girl from a nearby village. Her real name hardly mattered anymore, because inside his imagination, she became Dulcinea del Toboso, the most beautiful woman in existence, perfect, elegant, untouchable. Though she barely even knew he existed, Don Quixote dedicated every future victory to her, because perhaps human beings do not truly fall in love with people. Sometimes, they fall in love with the beautiful stories they create around them. At sunrise, Don Quixote finally left home. The world stretched endlessly before him. Golden fields, wind moving across distant hills. And inside his chest, hope burned like fire. For the first time in years, life felt meaningful. Adventure waited everywhere. Or at least, he believed it did. People stared strangely as he passed. Children laughed. Travelers whispered, because to everyone else, he looked absurd. A fragile old man wearing broken armor. But Don Quixote walked proudly, because dreamers rarely care how reality sees them. Then, he saw them. Massive shapes turning slowly against the sky, windmills. But Don Quixote did not see windmills. He saw giants, evil monsters threatening the land. And instantly, his blood filled with heroic purpose. His loyal companion, Sancho Panza, begged him to stop. "Those are only windmills," Sancho warned. But Don Quixote refused reality itself. "No," he whispered. "They are giants?" Then he charged forward heroically, sword raised high. The wind screamed through the blades. And moments later, the spinning arms struck him violently, throwing both knight and horse into the dirt. Pain exploded across his body, yet even lying broken on the ground, Don Quixote refused accepting truth, because sometimes people protect their illusions more fiercely than reality. Sancho Panza was not a hero, not noble, not legendary, only an ordinary farmer searching for a better life. Yet somehow, he followed Don Quixote anyway. Perhaps because every dreamer secretly needs someone willing to believe beside them. Or perhaps because loneliness becomes easier when shared. Together, they wandered across Spain, sleeping beneath stars, crossing dusty roads, searching endlessly for adventures that existed only inside Don Quixote's imagination. And slowly, something strange began happening. Though Sancho understood reality, part of him started admiring Don Quixote's madness. Because the old man saw beauty everywhere, meaning everywhere, wonder everywhere, even inside ordinary life. Everywhere they traveled, people mocked them. Innkeepers laughed. Travelers humiliated them. Wealthy nobles treated Don Quixote like entertainment. And yet, he continued smiling, continued dreaming, continued believing. That is what makes Don Quixote both tragic and beautiful. Because despite the cruelty of the world, he never allowed reality to destroy his imagination completely. And perhaps that is something most people lose as they grow older. The ability to believe life can still become extraordinary. But slowly, the journey became more painful. Don Quixote's body weakened. The world grew colder. And beneath every adventure, loneliness waited silently. Because deep inside, Don Quixote understood something terrifying. The world he loved no longer truly existed. Honor, knighthood, meaning, all had faded long ago. He was chasing ghosts, trying desperately to keep beauty alive in a world becoming empty. And perhaps that is why his story still hurts people centuries later. Because every human being eventually faces the same question. Is it better to live painfully inside reality or beautifully inside a dream? Eventually, the adventures ended. The roads became quieter, the dreams weaker. And Don Quixote finally returned home. Old, exhausted, broken. He lay silently in bed for days. And slowly, the madness disappeared. Reality returned, painfully. For the first time in years, he saw the world clearly again. No giants, no castles, no legendary destiny. Only an old man near death. And perhaps that moment was the saddest tragedy of all. Because sometimes, dreams are the only thing keeping people alive. Why does Don Quixote still survive after hundreds of years? Because beneath its humor, it tells a deeply human truth. The world often destroys dreamers. Reality humiliates them, laughs at them, calls them foolish. But without dreamers, life becomes unbearably empty. Don Quixote may have been delusional, but he also saw beauty where others saw nothing, wonder where others saw boredom, adventure where others saw ordinary roads. And perhaps that is why people still love him. Because somewhere inside every human being, there remains a small part still searching for impossible things, still hoping life can become magical again. And here at NOI, we tell stories exactly like this. Stories about loneliness, dreams, human nature, and the fragile line between imagination and reality. So tonight, close your eyes, listen to the wind, and ride once more beside the saddest dreamer ever written. Subscribe to NOER, because some stories are not meant to be explained. They are meant to stay with you forever.